Gentlemen, this station stop is Minneapolis-St. Paul, the Twin Cities. Thank you.
Proud to introduce Olympian Eric Venn.
I just got back from China, and that is it's a strange country, but I'll tell you, it's people were super nice. But I was looking at the country, and before we went over there, the USOC told us, they said, be prepared to have your phone calls monitored, your emails read. And when I was over there, I heard the cabs were mic'd, and I kept on hearing all these things about, just dictatorship. And I just came back and I said, thank God I don't live there. But then I realized they read my emails, they listen to my phone calls, and in reality, we're just one terrorist attack away from martial law. And that's the scariest thing. And I remember when I first came on the international scene, America would go around with so much pride and so much conviction, and we would proudly wear the stars and stripes inside of our bags when we were traveling. We would travel in USA team gear, and there was a sense of pride. And that was in 2000. I remember looking around the Olympic Village, seeing hundreds and hundreds of American flags throughout the Olympic Village in our section. Fast forward to 2004, post-Iraq invasion, post-Afghanistan, post-9/11, we weren't even allowed to fly flags. And in a way, I felt shameful. And we were sitting there, fearful, shameful in the corner. And that's not how I wanted to feel. I wanted to feel proud. I wanted to feel proud about my country again. And the two Democrat, Republican, you kidding me? They're the same people. The only people that are different are the people sitting in this room. And we gotta change. But what we gotta do right now is carry on and become a dominating force. We gotta have people stand and run on long-haul platforms. We gotta continue this momentum that we have, because this is amazing. This is absolutely amazing. Guys, thank you very much. Continue the movement.
Serve my country today as a member of Iraq Veterans Against the War, Veterans for Peace, and the Campaign for Liberty. I'd like to take a second to recognize the veterans in the room. If you would please stand, and any active duty service members, please stand. Responsibility now to resist tyranny civilly while we still can.
When I look at the United States being turned into East Berlin, it is not the country that I served when I was in the military. And let me say this for a moment. For those that doubt whether I have the right to say what I say, my father was a World War II veteran. My mother was a World War II veteran. How many people can say their mom served as a nurse in North Africa? My brother's a Vietnam veteran, as am I. So I think my family has earned the right to speak in what's supposed to be a free country. Number one, why has the United States Department of Justice not charged Osama bin Laden for 9/11? Now, they charged him when he blew up our embassy in Africa in '98. Why the biggest terrorism act in history have they failed to officially charge him for? Why have they not convened a grand jury, presented their evidence, and got an indictment?
There is no evidence.
Second, go to the internet and go to the FBI website and go to their international list of top 10 terrorists. You will see bin Laden there. Bring his name up and his picture. Amazingly, all the charges, the embassy of '98 and all this other stuff is all listed. but ironically, nothing on 9/11. Nothing. Now, when the FBI was pressed as to why 9/11 wasn't included, their response was, we don't have enough evidence. Now, people, if you're like me, that is extremely disturbing. We fought 2 wars, we've changed our entire foreign policy, and we've had the Patriot Act put on us, all supposedly because of Osama bin Laden. Well, I think we should have to charge, aren't you innocent in this country until proven guilty? Well, as distasteful as that is, he deserves the same thing. He needs to be charged. Why is he not charged if he did it? I'm down to 4 minutes. They got the clock timer here, so we'll start winding it up. But again, I leave you with those 2 thoughts to think about. To think about a moment. Why has that not happened? Why did we have a president who stonewalled any investigation of 9/11 for over 2 years? Well, all I'm saying is that the truth lies with us, ladies and gentlemen. We are the people of the United States of America. If we have a terrible media, it's our fault. Because we should hold them to a higher standard and demand more from them. I am not a Democrat. And I am not a Republican. And I say that very proudly today because I think these 2 parties are destroying our country. We are now over $9 trillion in debt. And who is responsible for this $9 trillion debt? The Democrats and the Republicans are responsible. And what solution are they offering? None. Nothing. You don't hear one word in these debates about the debt. Why? Because they're equally responsible and it's indefensible. It is indefensible. What are we made to do? We're made to pick the lesser of 2 evils. In the words of the late, great Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead, Jerry always said if you're made to pick the lesser of 2 evils, it means you're still picking evil. I mean, look what just happened. The Democrats gutted the 4th Amendment. They gave the president the right to wiretap you, read your emails, and do all of that stuff. It's called illegal search and seizure. Just as the First Amendment gives us the right to free speech. Well, let's remember this. It isn't popular speech that must be protected. Popular speech doesn't need protection. It is unpopular speech that you protect. To that Second Amendment. Now, I'm not a gun-toting fool, but I get so pissed off when I hear them saying, well, we're not going to take away your ability to hunt. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I got news for you. When our forefathers wrote the Constitution with the right to bear arms, it was not about hunting and fishing. back then, if you didn't hunt or fish, you didn't eat. The Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, is there so that we, the public, if our government gets out of control, we have the ability to rise up and change it. Does not make us fools. It does not make us gun-crazy people. There's a reason they put that in there. And as I said, the reason is so we have the ability. Now, many people have said to me, well, wait a minute. How could we, the citizens, ever stand up to the U.S. government and their entire military might? Well, wait a minute. I got the answer. We threw everything we had at Vietnam, and they were nothing but a bunch of farmers with a few AK-47s, and they withstood it all. So, ladies and gentlemen, don't ever let them take our rights. The hell with this Patriot Act. If you want to be patriotic, then stand up for the Bill of Rights. Because once they strip the rights from you, you will pay hell to get them back.
Wake up! Wake up in America! Rise and shine! Rise and shine! Save the Constitution away! When they're gonna give us the fight! Start a revolution! Break down illegal institutions!
Thank you. That's it. And I truly do want to thank you. The support that you have given to me personally, to my family, and to the campaign has been really, really helpful to all that I've done. But you know, Barry Goldwater gave me a wonderful introduction. He talked about my family. And you know, he mentioned my wife Carol's been sick and she's home and doing much better. But you know, I know she's doing a lot better because before I left home, she gave me a lot of instructions. And she told me what I was supposed to say here tonight. And one thing that she wanted me to say was a thank you, just personally from her, for the support, the prayers, and the letters and comments that you have made. We have really been blessed by all of your friendship. You know, and even in that event, I saw something very wonderful about it, because our Christian friends sent us good wishes and prayers, and our Jewish friends sent good wishes and prayers, and our Muslim friends sent us good wishes and prayers. And lo and behold, we received a lot of good wishes from some agnostics and atheists, and we were delighted to get those as well. It confirms my conviction and freedom brings people together. When they asked me about what I wanted to do as president, I said, you know, I really look at it differently. I want to be president because of the things I don't want to do. But they said that sounds like a weak president. I said, well, I don't think so. I think resisting the temptation of power requires some strength, and we don't need more government power. And I hope you agree that this has been a fantastic rally today. What do you think? And guess what? Guess what? Not one single taxpayer cent was spent on this rally. Now, I understand there's another meeting in a nearby town going on. Let us be respectful. But I also understand that we do not have to respect the conditions that allow both other conventions to get $16.8 million apiece to run their party. And here we are. This was not inexpensive, and all of you contributed to it, and some a lot more than others, a lot of volunteers, a lot of money, and we paid every cent, and there is going to be no debt. It's a new century, and there's a lot more problems. And we have terrible threats around the world. We have a foreign policy that's gone amok. We have a monetary system that's in a mess, and we know all our problems. But there's an urgency in what we do, because we are carrying the banner, and we must act, because we, as a group, now have a greater moral responsibility to act than those who live in ignorance. Once you become knowledgeable, you have an obligation to do something about it. Probably one of the most exciting things that happened during the campaign was the response that we got from a certain segment of society. In Washington, D.C., we frequently have resolutions being passed that rubber stamp the foreign policy of intervention. But they always get passed, usually nearly unanimously. Maybe there's a few, and sometimes there's only one opposing the resolution. These resolutions will be designed to support the policies in Iraq and our so-called threat against Iran. And it is said that if you don't support it, you don't support the troops. Well, you know, the most exciting thing was, I think it was in our first quarter this year, when they added up the number of dollars that came from the troops, our campaign got more money from the troops than all the other candidates put together. So often people ask me, how did we lose the republic? Have we lost it? Essentially we have, and maybe hanging by a thread. That's why I claim that we have a sense of urgency here. We don't have decades and decades. We have to do something rather quickly. But today we have to move rather quickly. But how did we lose it? And I think some of the things that happened in Washington symbolize this loss of the republic. And one thing that I made comments many years ago that I noticed on the House floor, and this has to change, that the two weakest arguments on the House floor would be a moral argument and a constitutional argument. That we need to change. That if the government gives us a tax cut, they have to be cautious because that is written off as a cost to government. How could that be? That is the assumption that the government owns us and owns the fruits of our labor, and what we get to keep is done at the permission of the government, which proves the point that even a 1% income tax is morally wrong because it sows the seeds of destruction. Another thing that has happened is that we lost track of the fact that the Constitution was written to restrain the government. Now it's turned on its head. The Constitution or the government is there, they use it to restrain us. That is upside down. And over the years, the government gets more and more powerful. It's not only the executive branch, it's the judicial branch, it's the legislative branch, it's the bureaucratic branch of government. And more power gravitates away from the individual, away from the states, into the hands of the bureaucrats and the politicians in Washington. Not only that, do we have to worry about all this power gravitating to the power to be in Washington, it's even going further. We have to worry about powers gravitating to international governments, to the New World Order. That of course, would have to be reversed as well. But another thing that happened over these many years that have allowed us to slip away from the Republic and the principles of liberty is we came as a nation to believe that a person needs are essentially rights. If you need something or want something or demand something, that does not give you a right to it. Rights are something that are very precious. They don't come from the government. They come in a natural way or a God-given way. They come as a right to your life and a right to your liberty. I believe the trends in the school system over the last many decades has been detrimental. And it hasn't been one party. Even in the 50s it started with the federal government getting involved. There is nothing in the Constitution that says the federal government should be involved in education at all. We've had a system of government that has been encouraged by our school system. The economics taught in the school system is never free market, Austrian hard money economics. It's always Keynesian, soft money economics that are wrong. And not only that, we get taught history in our public schools. And who are the great presidents? The great presidents are always said to be the ones who run a war. Why don't we have the peace candidates be the great presidents? Something else has happened over the many decades, and that is our confusion on what patriotism is all about. Guess who the true early American patriots supported? They didn't support the current government that they had, and yet today they want you to believe that patriotism means that you support everything the government wants. A true patriot defends liberty and the people. And just naming a bill the Patriot Act and voting for that doesn't make you a patriot. The true patriot will repeal the Patriot Act. Is what they and you care about peace, you have to care about liberty, not socialism and welfareism and corporatism. We as a group are often challenged by saying, oh, you're the people that want to go back to the dark ages. You want to go back to the dark ages of sound money. You want to go to the dark ages of minding our own business in international affairs. But the real truth is that the old-fashioned ideas is tyranny, and we want to get away from those old-fashioned ideas. Freedom is a new idea, and it's only been tried in a short period of time, and that's when the world has become more productive and poverty has been wiped out. But what do we see now? We're drifting back in that direction, and people are moving into poverty, even in this country, because they do not understand and do not defend the principles of liberty. Ago or so, philosophically, this country accepted the notion that freedom was made up of two parts. Two parts, one where your personal liberties mean one thing, and on the other hand, your economic liberties are separate. That is complete nonsense. Liberty is one unit. You have a right to your life. You have a right to live your life the way you want. You have a right to work hard, and you ought to have a right to keep the fruits of your labor. In one of the debates we were asked as a group, what do you think is the greatest moral crisis that we're facing today in this country? And the thought that crossed my mind during that debate, and I still believe it's one of the most serious moral crises we face, and that is we as a nation have come to accept, at least the policies go in that direction, that we as a nation now accept the principle of preventive war, actually start a war. There is no moral justification from that, and there certainly is no constitutional justification to fight these many wars that we have been fighting without a declaration of war. We take the oath of office to obey the Constitution when we're sworn into office, and we take that when we're sworn into the military. And we swear to uphold the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Guess what? We do a pretty good job defending against foreign threats. We overdo that because we have no foreign threats. We have no threat that somebody's going to invade this country. We have a threat of terrorism, and that is a consequence of a seriously flawed foreign policy. We overdo our concerns about our foreign threats, but we do forget about the threat from our domestic conditions that we have here. And since 9/11, our liberties have been threatened. They have been undermined. We are less free since 9/11. We're going in the wrong direction. Both parties in these last several decades, and especially in the last decade, has accepted the notion of the unitary president, which is essentially a dictatorship, allowing the president to make decisions Just think of the inconsistency of turning this power over to the executive branch and then allowing the president to make these decisions, writing executive orders. There should be essentially no executive orders, or very, very few executive orders. And we can't have a president that goes and takes a bill and arbitrarily writes a signing statement and says, oh, I only like part of this bill, I'm going to ignore the other part. No presidential signing statements to have line item vetoes. Another reason why we've lost the republic, it didn't come all of a sudden, is it's come slowly and insidiously. The last 100 years has been tough on the republic. But it started immediately after the Constitution. I mean, the Jeffersonians argued with the Hamiltonians, and they talked about central banking and big government and sedition acts. And so the fights were going on very early to undermine these principles that the founders understood. But today, it's been more rapid, it's insidious and slowly. But I think what has lulled so many people to sleep has been that we have been pretty prosperous. We're still fairly prosperous. But there is a big difference today, and why the people are awakening is they know that it's an illusion. They know that the prosperity is actually going down, and they're starting to realize that this prosperity comes from too much borrowing, and too much spending, and too much inflation. Terrorism because of the clash of civilization. Another civilization wants to attack us because we are a certain civilization. I haven't bought into that, but there is some religious problems in the world that helps contribute to this, and there's a foreign policy problem that contributes to it. But I do believe that there is a real clash and an argument between radical Muslim fundamentalists in contrast to secular Muslims. It just happens that we as a nation have allied ourselves with secular Muslims, imposed our will by propping up these puppet governments in the Middle East, antagonizing and actually giving motivation to the radicalism that wants to come here to kill us. But why should that be so strange? What if somebody came over here that looked differently than us, had different religious and different values, and put an air base on our land and impose their will? The one good thing that would come of that is this whole country would be totally unified, because we would resent the enforcement and the occupation of any foreign power on our land. Civilization advances when you have less power in government. The more power you have in government, the more they resort to the ancient tradition of the warrior spirit. The warrior spirit where everything is gained by going out and robbing and killing and plundering. And today it's a little bit different. They plunder through inflating the currency and taxation, but it's still plundering, but it's power in the hands of government. We had an example, a beautiful example of minimal power in our government, and then we had maximum productivity and maximum wealth. But today we think too much of the wealth and believe that government provides this, rather than understanding that wealth and prosperity comes from freedom and productivity and not from the government. One other thing that we have done to help contribute to the loss of our republic has been this notion that we should give up some of our liberties to be safe and secure. There is absolutely never a reason to give up 1 ounce of freedom for the sake of security. It won't work. Besides our flawed foreign policy, there were a few other problems that contributed to 9/11. One was our lack of clear understanding of how the Second Amendment is supposed to work. And once again, even before 9/11, it was assumed the government would take care of us and be safe. They were in charge of airport security, and they after some hijacking in the 70s, that we were all taught, one thing you never do is resist anybody that wants to take over an airplane, and certainly the airlines wouldn't be allowed to have guns on the airplane. That would be terrible. But we have companies in this country still today. These companies are armored cars, and they carry money around, and they have guns, and they do a pretty good job protecting their cargo. But we were handicapped in this country because we were dependent on the government, and our cargo, our passengers, weren't protected as they should have been. They say that, no, they're too dangerous, but can you imagine what 4 airplanes involved? Maybe 4 guns, or just the knowledge that the guns were there might have prevented the whole thing. There have been some serious consequences of our lack of respect and our loss of liberty and lack of concern and defense of our republic. And we're suffering the consequences. This is what we're talking about. How can we reverse this trend? I think we have to understand how it happened, what the problems were, and what we have to aim for. But we've had a lot of problems because of this. Number one, economic problems, because they do not understand the Constitution and economics on monetaries. I mean, it is very clear what we should be doing. The founders knew and understood something about inflation. The runaway inflation of the continental dollar was devastating to the economy, so they were explicit. They said no emitting of bills of credit, no printing money, no paper money, and that only gold and silver should be legal tender. Not yet. Didn't even single yet. Now it comes. There is no authority in the Constitution authorizing a central bank, which means there should be no Federal Reserve System. As a consequence of our lack of concern for the protection of liberties, we have suffered tremendously from this. We don't have privacy anymore. We pass bills like the Patriot Act and the FISA legislation and the Military Commissions Act. No Military Commissions Act. We need to defend habeas corpus. Drugs are very dangerous. I think illegal drugs, the ones that are currently illegal, are very, very dangerous, and we should be very cautious about it. But I also, as a physician, recognize of the great danger of prescription drugs. What about the government mandating mental health testing for all our school kids? And when they run these pilot programs, they find that 10% of our students really need help with these psychotropic drugs. That's the kind of drug regulation that we need. We need to stop that. But there are restrictions and restraints, and it just goes on and on. And it comes from the concession that we need a little bit of government or a little bit of welfare. I've heard so many times over the years that, yes, I'm opposed to this welfare system, I'm opposed to this, unless you need it. But if you concede it and say, well, there's only a few people that need it, and there has to be a safety net. The problem with that argument is you assume it's going to be a small percentage of people that are going to get the help, but you've conceded 100% of the principle. And then what happens is if there's something that comes for free, you subsidize something, you get more of it, and it leads to the devastating complications of what a welfare society comes to. But not only that, is so often the good motivations, the moral high ground that the other side so often have, is doesn't work out. It doesn't really help those people, whether it's domestic welfare or national and foreign welfare. What it generally helps are the people who are in power and in control of the corporations. If you have a housing program, and we've just witnessed what happens when the government gets involved in directing housing money and the malinvestment through the Federal Reserve. So what they do is they end up doing the same thing over and over again, and what we need to do is break up this cycle and say that we have to stop this, because if not, it'll bankrupt and destroy our country and destroy our liberties. There's one issue that frequently I barely mention, and I'm going to talk about a little bit more tonight, and that is the bum rap we get who believe in freedom that we don't care about the environment. That is just not true. The environment, if you think about it, has been damaged very often by bad federal government regulations. The dependency on government to build our rivers and our dams and our levees and say that government will take care of us, and they build them in the wrong places, and we have these consequences. But the environment can be protected by the marketplace and strict adherence to property rights. People do not... None of us have a right to pollute our neighbor's property. We don't have a right to pollute their property, their air, or their water. A strict adherence would protect the environment. in welfare, the corporations benefit, and some of the rules and regulations in the environment, certain corporations benefit by that as well. Somebody abuses the system. That's why government should be very minimal in protecting liberty. It's like being liberty license. It means that you have a right to your own life, but you don't have a right to do any harm to your neighbors or another person. That is the one limitation that we have. Whether it, I believe, is coming out as a consequence of the campaign. The campaign in the primary has been transitioned to the Campaign for Liberty, and now we've had a grand 3 days, and we're climaxing that campaign right now. And there's every reason in the world for us to be energized. It has been phenomenal. And can you imagine going from those 12 spammers we had at the beginning to what we have here tonight? So once again, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for the trust that you have placed in me, but more so the trust that you have placed in the concept of our God-given rights to our life and our liberty. Thank you very much.
Veterans for Peace really want to try to actually abolish war and certainly reduce its importance in U.S. national policy. We don't want anybody attacking the veterans. We need to defend the country. We believe in defending the country. But that doesn't mean attacking any little country that our president gets upset with.
It's not the troops' mission, it's the neocons' mission. Are there any veterans or active duty service members in the audience? The men and women standing up are the ones that not only have the courage to swear an oath to support and defend the Constitution and back that up with their lives, but to challenge the party line, to challenge the neocon agenda, to challenge the fascist, imperialist policy that is being foisted upon this country.
This battle line's being drawn. Nobody's right if everybody's wrong.
Many Republicans might say they've opposed this administration privately. You might say the same thing about the Stalin, the Hitler, and the Mao administration. Remember the phrase, humble foreign policy? Coming from Bush, that sounds about as ridiculous as the phrase, peaceful war, except he seems to believe in that too. Bush was going to create, quote, an ownership society. Some commentators were stupid enough to believe that by this he meant he would privatize things and give control back to the people. To those who bought this line, I have only one thing to say, you got owned.
RNT, Fascism on Display, 08, the last chapter. People pay good money to listen to this music, so you should dance.
Down with Big Brother. Down with Big Brother. Down with Big Brother.
liberty.